Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about social trust, or rather the declining social trust in the West, all across the Western world. It's happening simultaneously, and it's being orchestrated and implemented by the globalist cabal, of course. But I just want to talk a little bit about social trust and some of the implications and some of the things the globalists are doing to break up social trust. Now, I think social trust was deeper and more cohesive, socially cohesive than the globalists imagined. I think they believed they could unravel it fairly quickly, and they have to some extent in some quarters. But generally, it hasn't. They haven't been able to sort of just take social trust out of the equation in the way that they thought they could, in the way that they need to, if they're going to implement or fully implement the globalist project. So now, as a young guy, just sort of starting out on international business travel, and I was in my early 20s when it kicked off, and I think I've told the story before. The only reason I began it so young is there was a gig to go to the United States and do what was really hard work and something that had almost no prestige associated with it, and because I was multilingual, they landed on, "Hey, Billy Bob, we've got kind of glamorous on the surface, but really it's going to be a lot of hard work, wearing a lot of shoe leather in the United States. So nobody really wants the job. Anyone who matters or who's important doesn't want the job. So we'll send you." And they sent me cattle class, and they put me in fucking shitty hotels and all that sort of stuff, but put me on a really tight budget. I couldn't use the hotel laundry facilities. I had to walk around the street finding a laundromat. But when you're a punk in your early 20s, fresh out of college type thing, or not long out of college, you sort of still think it's pretty glamorous in a way, although it was hard work. Anyway, that's so. But one thing I noticed when I started traveling was how most of the places, not the first world countries, but most of the places I visited had a very different level of social trust amongst the people in that society or that city or that group. So that surprised me. I just assumed that the social trust in Australia, where I lived, I just assumed that sort of social trust was about how it was everywhere, and I was little surprised. I should have. Enough signs were around where I guess I shouldn't have been that prejudicial in just assuming that social trust was the same everywhere, because it wasn't. But one thing that surprised me is in the measure of the amount of social trust had an almost direct relationship with the wealth of that society or that nation. Now, that was a time when nation and society were about the same thing. I mean, it's different now, of course, with all this mass migration, again, forced on us by the globalists. But so the poorest countries had the least amount of social trust. And when you've got a low amount of social trust, you're not prepared to invest in tomorrow, or not even prepared to invest in today most of the time. And you're out to just grab what you can quickly get, and that's your achievement scale. So breaking windows and robbing a store, for example, is the achievement of the day, rather than anything that may be more longer lasting or have a better chance of developing wealth over a period of time, for example. Now, this relationship stayed pretty much constant. So I would go to a poor country, whether it be in South America or Asia or anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'd go to a poor, this is for doing business, go to a poor country to do business. And remember, I'm out of the tourist areas, and I'm not doing the touristy things. I'm actually having to deal with the people. And I found that in these low trust societies, and I mean low trust societies, wealth was very concentrated. Nobody trusted anybody else. Everyone assumed the other guy was out to screw them in some way. So that on that basis, because everyone's out to screw me, I'm permitted to go and screw them, was the attitude. So you've got this odd sort of thing where everyone's trying to fuck everyone else. And so no one's really prepared to make an investment because there's no trust. People don't invest in tomorrow. And they don't do the basic sort of things that people who trust each other in communities and you may not trust as in 100% trust and or 0%. There's only the binary option. It's not that way. There are varying degrees of trust. Even in Australia, I may go into an area where there's a very high crime area with a lot of theft and so on. And my radar says, well, don't trust these people as much as you would people in the area that you live in, for example. So there's still that, and that can be more class-based, I guess, than anything. But in these societies, they trusted me, the incoming white boy that they've never met before and know nothing about. They trusted me more than they trusted their fellow citizens and so on, which I found sort of rather strange. Now, again, when it comes to doing business, I took the fairly sort of pragmatic view. If there's no point in trying to screw these guys, because if you screw them, they're going to, they'll never do business with you again, or they'll be forever trying to get back at you, or they'll blacken your name in the local business community in whatever country it is, so you'll struggle to do business with anyone else. So it's better to just not do that. Just be very straightforward. Okay, here's the deal. Let's work together. Let's cooperate to make money. Now, you'd think that's a fairly simple thing, and in the white countries you could do that, or in the high trust societies anyway, which tended to be white, you could do that. But in societies where you've got black and brown people, and low trust societies to boot, they can't comprehend. They think that's some sort of trick. He's just trying to get us off guard, and then he's going to screw us. So they'd be spending so much energy looking for the trick, looking for the hand coming up under the skirt, as it were. They spend so much energy doing that and being so sort of hyper, trying to be sort of super hyper vigilant. Where is the attack coming from? That type of thing. Where's the ambush going? And they would take the view that the more sophisticated you were, the more likely your ambush was going to be so equally so sophisticated that they wouldn't see it coming. So they also had this defensive, almost childlike defensiveness. So you really got to, hey guys, fucking focus on the business. Focus on the business. Stop imagining these demons and phantoms everywhere. Focus on this. And so they would be constantly trying to probe and test for the trick. Now, this sort of, not that they had been screwed over before by white people or anything like, it wasn't that. It's just that was their entrenched mindset of low social trust, and it's how low social trust manifests. Everyone is trying to get you. Now, also in the low trust societies, they have, as I've mentioned in a number of videos, India and the subcontinent generally, and other places, but where they've got no comprehension about how wealth is made. You only make money by taking someone else's money. That's the only way it's done. Now, in the case of Africa, people wonder, well, how come these countries have remained poor for hundreds, if not thousands of years? Why are they, technically thousands of years behind the white West? So just, the mud hut standard in Africa as a case in point. That's because there's no point in a low trust society. Well, why would you invest in tomorrow? If you build anything up, someone's going to steal it from you, or take it from you, or trick you out of it, or some tribal chieftain's going to come along and claim it, or something, because there's no contracts or rule of law, or these sorts of things. None of the systems that engender and sort of create trust exist. They're just not there. So why would you invest? Why would you invest in tomorrow? You do something only what you can do now, right on the spot. That's the only thing you have control over, and therefore your social trust doesn't extend beyond that. Now it's different in the white West. Now, why is it that did the trust come first, and white societies became rich because the trust came first, or or was it some sort of agreed power sharing, which I guess is an extension of trust? And why were the black societies and other societies, not just the blacks, why were they unable to generate the sort of trust that was necessary to create the wealth and build things? Now, if you look at, say, the history of China, they've gone through periods of reasonably good social trust, the original Confucian bureaucracy, that sort of thing. And then it's suddenly violently all sort of fallen apart, and warlords and goons and heavies have tried to come in and take over. Then it sort of settled down again, then fled up again. And so that they've had very intermittent social trust there. You look at places like Japan, not that they haven't had their civil strife, they have, but I was amazed at the high levels of, I'm not even sure I'd call it social trust necessarily, agreed parameters of conformity, maybe probably a better way of looking at Japan. But again, you are able to go to Japan and talk in a direct manner about business that you can't in other parts of Asia. So again, the Philippines, for example, is a poor country. It was a poor country when the Europeans turned up. It was a poor country when the Americans came after the Spanish. It was a poor country when the Americans left, and it's still a fucking poor country. Why is Indonesia a poor country? Basically, technically, with all the resources they have there, they should be doing pretty good, but they're not. And they're a dirt poor country where, again, you've got the dead bodies in the street syndrome. India. Why is India still per capita so dirt fucking poor? Again, walking over dead bodies in the street. So now in India, they've got a very low trust between the classes. The castes there, between the regions, between the states. There's very low levels of trust there. There's higher levels of trust, say, in America, when you had those waves of immigration, the Italians and the Swedes and the Germans and the British and the Irish. And not that there wasn't friction from time to time. There was, but the trust in the United States is quite high. When I found that when I was going to the United States and talking business to Jewish businesses, I found that suddenly they had a completely different view of trust. It wasn't the same as the people, and they behaved like an alien race in the United States, certainly in terms of those social trust things. And again, their attitude was, you're trying to screw me, but I'm going to screw you first. So, suck on that, motherfucker. And that sort of attitude. And I found that strange. And when you try and explain to people, and say even the East European countries and East European business people, some of this is insecurity and chip on shoulder about big sophisticated Western guy and that sort of stuff. But they also had this low social trust thing of outsiders, probably more than necessarily with each other, but certainly a low level of trust, and so therefore they would seek conflict and this sort of thing. So rather than just getting on with it. And I found that strange sort of paranoia difficult to comprehend. Now, when doing business, for me, it's fairly plain. You look at the basic requirements of a business, being a successful business relationship. It could be anything, but okay, we're going to buy X amount of widgets from you at this price. The market price for the widget is $100. You're going to sell it to us for $70. Therefore, we can meet the market price, still make a profit. We can dedicate these resources to it based on that profit. And so you look at the sort of straight mathematical, logistical, physical building blocks of success, and that to me is, as long as those are in place, it doesn't really matter whether I trust you or not. That ceases to be important at that point, because there are contract laws, and I can drag you into court, and I can, if party A reneges on it, and that sort of thing. Now, this is not something that these people understood. Some you could say was their naivety about business, but it went beyond that. It comes back again to this social trust. I expect people to behave in a certain way. So when you drive down the road and you're at the stoplight, you expect the other cars to stop when the stoplight is. You just assume that's going to happen. But if you were in a situation where you thought, well, they may or may not stop, they may or may not heed or ignore the lights, the stop lights. So I have to, instead of just driving straight through and the light's green, I have to stop and inch forward very slowly, looking all around me, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's an example. Or when you go to a shop and you hand over the item you want to buy is $5, but you've only got a $10 note, so you hand over the $10, and you just expect that the shop, the person in the shop is going to give you the $5 change. You don't question it or doubt it, but what if you didn't? Then you would say, no, I'm not going to buy that item because I haven't got the exact money, or you would film the whole thing with a witness to make sure that you had the evidence if you didn't get the $5, or things like say returning shopping carts and shopping trolleys to the bay, or to not use them to take your stuff out to the car or the public transport or something like that. Now, to give you an example, just recently, there's an Asian family's been put in to a place not that far from here, which is like one of those government rental places where the government rents it for short term to put up illegals or supposed refugees and that sort of thing. Now they see, well, the shopping cart is there, at the shop, so they go to the shop, and then they wheel the shopping cart back the mile and a half to where they're living, and then they just leave it in the street. They go back to the shop the next day, but they don't take the shopping cart with them. So the following day, another shopping cart appears, and another shopping cart, and so on. So now it's very much an Asian thing, that, and some stores now have instituted special locking devices on the shopping cart, so they can't be more than 25 meters from the front door of the shop or something. So there are all sorts of responses to this that are happening around retailers. But the thing, why do they take the shopping cart in the first place? It's not there for that, but it's there. There's no strict law that says I can't, and so they're not prepared to act in the interests of the community. They're prepared to act in personal interest. Now, when we use shopping trolleys to get to the car, we either return it to the shopping trolley bay, or we put it into like the shopping trolley sort of section on that floor of the parking lot, but we don't just leave it hanging around. We feel we've got an obligation to, and these are little measures of social trust. Now, looking at say in the United States, where social trust is clearly breaking down. What are the causes of this breakdown? Well, there are a few things. Firstly, there's mass migration. So the people that are being imported to the West are all from low social trust or zero social trust societies, and they don't see they have any obligation to anyone outside of their family, or their immediate diaspora, like people from their tribal village or something like that. But outside of that, they have no obligation, as they see it, to anyone else in society. So, and anyone who's different from them, they have no social trust obligations towards them, or civic obligations and commitments. So you add on top of this mass migration, which is causing a breakdown, and that you look at the way that the globalists are trying to turn the races against each other. White supremacy is the biggest danger. Hitler. And this is an outrageous bit of cynical fucking propaganda, but the globalists are pushing that to create division along racial fault lines, to gender fault lines, misogynists everywhere oppressing women. Then along the LGBTQ line, transgender lesbians are being oppressed by straight people. And there's another fault line, and so on. So these are all devices that are breaking down social trust that previously did exist, or levels of tolerance, either way you want to look at it. So this idea of social trust, it was plain to me as when I first started international traveling on business, that if you want a wealthy society, you must have a high trust society. Now, it's a high trust in believing in the independence of courts, believing in the rule of law will be applied equally. That if if the black lesbian robs a bar of chocolate from the store, and the straight white guy does that equally, they will be equally dealt with by the law, and the law will be equally applied. These sorts of things. That is certainly, I think, important there, because once I'm convinced, or any citizen's convinced and I'm prepared to invest trust and social trust in the institutions, then I can go and get on with things. I'm not constantly peering over my shoulder. I can just get on with building wealth and building my life, and looking after the family members or whatever. But if you're concerned that the way you'll be dealt with is different from where someone else, or the contractual obligations and so on, then you won't invest your trust in that society. And now the next thing I'll talk about is that the reason black, say in the United States, which would be the primary example, the reason black people don't get on is because of they don't have a high level of social trust, because the system is prejudiced against them. Now, I find that sort of, I struggle a little bit with that. I see the point that the outcomes are unequal, therefore, is there something wrong? But for people that are, they come from societies and live in, they don't trust each other, let alone, this was something that surprised me as well. They don't trust each other, these people, the black communities. They've got very low trust in each other. Now, if they had high trust in each other, but low trust in whites uniquely, or the white system, and then you go, okay, well, that's maybe something to look at there. But they don't. They have very low trust in each other, let alone the white societies. And the idea of social trust is very much still built around the African village mentality of we should be sharing everything, and justice should be administered by tribal elders and these sort of people, rather than an impartial system, like an independent court. So their concept of what constitutes justice and fair dealing, or fair dealing, I guess, more here. But they have never, black societies have never been high trust throughout history. Why should they suddenly be now, just because they're in a white majority country? The trust levels and behaviour of the blacks in America is a very close approximation of how blacks behave in Africa, and how they view each other. So the low trust sort of factor is endemic throughout black societies everywhere in the world. I don't think there is a high trust black society anywhere in the world, or not that I'm aware of. So these people come into the West from Africa and so on, and they don't come from high trust societies. They don't understand high trust societies, nor are they prepared to make the civic obligations to the wider society behaviourally and in many ways that would have them fitting into a high trust society. And high trust society requires behavioural thing. You're not going to urinate in the pot plants in the offices. And, it's a whole lot of little things as well, but it's an investment in the society and to be treated as you want to be treated. Now, no black person wants to be stabbed in the street, but it's okay to stab someone else in the street. So as long as you're not getting the problem, then it's kind of okay. So as long as you're breaking the windows in the store and stealing the things, it's okay. But it's not okay if it's your shop, and so on. So this is not how civic obligation and high social trust is developed and maintained. But the social trust that I remember as a younger guy, even from 20 years ago, the social trust I remember in society is rapidly disappearing, and primarily in Australia and elsewhere in the Western world, because of the influx of low social trust people. It was there are places now where you have to show, to even walk in the door, your driver's license and/or passport. You never used to have to do things like that. The list goes on of there are so many now, I couldn't even name them, of things where you're required to meet an exceptionally high standard of proving who you are and so on. You're going to the doctor, for example, because there are so many scams by people from low trust societies going on, pharmacies and so on and so forth. So just getting a basic prescription for whatever from a pharmacy or a chemist. They want ID and they want your phone number and they want fuck knows what. That never used to happen. But again, it's because people from low trust societies are coming in. And whether it be from India or the Indian subcontinent or anywhere else around Asia, the only high trust society in Asia, that is really Japan. Outside of that, they're just varying degrees of low trust societies, and of course when these people come to Australia en masse, which is what's been happening over the last 20 years, then that drastically and radically changes how our institutions and retail stores, how they interact with us, and how social trust is then declining. For example, already there are numerous shops where, and this is since the mass migration, numerous shops where the higher value products and even some of the lower value products are now not hidden, but locked up behind cages. So the last comment I'll make on social trust is the cost of living has been artificially, it's nothing organic about it, that's been artificially forced upon us by the globalists through mass buying of real estate by the small corrupt few, the cost of energy, and these bullshit green schemes because the planet's going to end tomorrow. And so what lies they tell us. And so the cost of living has gone through. So it's genuinely hard now for some people, many people, to make ends meet. So, on lower fixed incomes and that sort of thing. So now you see things like in the higher value items, just in the supermarket, like or the grocery store, things like cuts of meat and all that sort of stuff. They now have got security stickers and security tags on them, for fuck's sake. And there's been a lot of press in Australia recently about the alleged billions of dollars of shoplifting and theft through stores. And I don't think all of this is just gangs of people told us, some will be. I think it's just people that are genuinely being squeezed by globalist policies that are turning people into thieves who otherwise wouldn't be. And it's also creating a climate of reducing social trust, or a downward incline in social trust amongst white people as well. You've been Tastas today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.